Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Levi Fuller. I work at Jack Straw Cultural Center, home of the Jack Straw New Media Gallery, and we're really pleased to have Satpreet here this evening for Artist Talk. I do hope if you haven't gotten a chance to check out the installation, it's up for another couple weeks in the New Media Gallery. You can email us, jsp@jackstraw.org, or call 206-634-0919 and set an appointment to come visit the gallery. You'll have the space all to yourself, which is a really great way to experience this work. Thank you for being here. I would like to thank the funders who support our artist residency programs, and the Jack Straw New Media Gallery is one of those residency programs. The City of Seattle Office of Arts and Culture, For Culture, King County Lodging Tax, Washington State Arts Commission, National Endowment for the Arts, Arts Fund, Rainier Foundation, excuse me, and also Humanities Washington and the National Endowment for the Humanities. And that last grant came as a result of the one of the relief acts of 2021, and I was supposed to have that in front of me and I lost it. So anyway, thank you very much to all of those people and organizations for their support of our programs, and to all the individual donors who help as well. It's really one of my favorite parts of my job is just getting to work with artists and experience their work and hear what they have to say about it. So without further ado, I will hand it over to Satpreet.
Thank you, Levi. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see that? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Okay, thank you everyone for coming. Especially I see a couple folks from the East Coast and it is late there, so I really appreciate it. Okay, so here's a picture of me. Here's a picture of my work. And then here's the work at Jack Straw, but I will talk about that and show more pictures in a little bit. What I really wanted to talk about today is something that I've been thinking about for a while, and kind of trying to parse and understand for myself. And it's really that making art is against my politics, or more specifically, participating in the arts is against my politics. And for me, I define art with the lowercase a as the process of creating. I don't think it has to be an object. I don't think it has to be what we consider visual or performance art or whatever. It can be anything. But to me, that it's important that it's healing, it's inclusive, it's participatory, it's generative, it's meditative, it's process oriented, it's accessible, and it's so many other things, on and on, all the things that make you feel good and warm and happy and in your body, and in your community. And then the arts with a capital A this is like a little definition that I kind of came up with as I was ruminating on this, but I consider it the economic activity surrounding art, which is invested in the notion of art as a consumable object created by someone belonging to the creative class to be used as a tool for wealth creation, accumulation, and hoarding. The arts insist on the framing of art through a capitalist lens. It's exclusionary, it's classist, it's elitist, it's inaccessible, it's misogynistic, it's imperialist, it's racist, and it's mean. And there's probably a lot of other things that you feel in your body in a totally different way than art with a lowercase a. It is against my politics, right? It makes me feel bad in my body. I don't like seeing other people encumbered in the arts when you get really caught up in like the idea of making an object that will be, you know, that'll like get you a grant and get you the gallery and get you all the things. But also I'm acknowledging that I keep doing it. And I think there are a lot of valid reasons. Like I do, you know, like so many artists have felt this strong, really strong impulse to create things and to make things since I was very young. And it's an impulse that's stronger than my dislike for the industry. But I also was talking to a friend yesterday And I was telling him, you know, like my day job is exhausting. I'm going through all this stuff with my health. And I just really feel like I'm like floundering. And then I have all of these exhibitions coming up, which I'm excited for and I love. And also it's exhausting. And he kind of asked me like, why can't you take a break from art? And I had to kind of acknowledge that I could, right? Like the process of making and the process of showing work are really different things. And there's a reason that I keep, you know, pursuing the sort of careerist arts. And I think, you know, it's this meme. I'm not immune to propaganda. I have internalized so much of the messaging around value and hierarchy in the arts, you know, what it means. Like I think about being in the Whitney Biennial all the time, like too much, you know, for someone who's probably never going to be in the Whitney Biennial. I think about all those things. I apply to all the big residencies and I think about applying to them. If I don't, I think about applying to all the big awards. And that's so separate from the process. Like when I'm in my studio or when I'm like with this installation at Jack Straw, when I'm sitting in front of it and just like in it, that experience versus the experience of sort of trying to like make all that stuff legible to this industry that's so attached to capitalism. Those are such different things. And just acknowledging that hypocrisy, right? So I can't even say making art is against my politics or participating in the arts is against my politics. It's like participating in the arts is against my theoretical politics, but it's perfectly in line with my lived politics as evidenced by so many things. Like today I'm exhausted and I'm here. And part of that is because, you know, I love like galleries like Jack Straw that are really artist oriented. And also, right, I don't want to be seen as flaky or unreliable or, you know, not ambitious. And so I'm here. It doesn't matter what would happen. Like I'm here, I'm going to show up. It doesn't matter what's happening in my personal life. So I'm interested in this line, right, between theory and practice, between idealism and reality, between the self you lay awake hoping you might become tomorrow and the self you encounter when you look in the mirror in the morning, which is probably like really similar to the self that you were when you were laying awake. And I'm really interested in that space between these things, like that interstitial space. Because I think that space might be like the most alive part of ourselves. At least for me, it feels that way. Because it's like unfixed and it's in flux and it's shifting and it's moving. It's illegible and it's difficult to decipher, like even to yourself. And it eludes capture because you can't really understand what it is, you can't capture it. And therefore it eludes definition. And because it cannot be defined, it can't be flattened. And because it cannot be flattened, it cannot be made into an image. And it is therefore the most inherently radical and revolutionary part of ourselves. It's expansive and it's confusing, it's contradictory, but it's also like very true. And I think that's the space that I'm really always thinking about in my own mind and in my own practice. And I think I was really trying to capture it when thinking about this work at Jack Straw. And so the work kind of in this way, right, where I'm thinking about this line, it has kind of two parts. And I don't really know what I call those two parts, but right now I kind of placeholders for what I call them is like the facade and the body. And the facade is the front. It's like this protective device. It's kind of seductive the way that, right, like the person I am right now in this presentation is like my facade self, right? It's like my professional artist self and everything is very well articulated. And then the body is like what's happening inside my brain, right? Which is, or like off this screen, which is like, I have a heating pad on and I'm kind of gassy and I'm tired. And like all of those things are the body. And so in the work, the facade is really process oriented. And it starts with cardboard, found and recycled cardboard that I then stitch together by hand using a long upholstery needle and weaving yarn. And these are the 4 panels for Jack Straw. And then I gesso it And then I do a photo transfer. So I print out an image on 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. And then I do a really lo-fi technique that's very labor intensive of doing a photo transfer where I affix, where it's like, I feel like most people in this room have probably done this. A lot of kids do this. They usually do it with Mod Podge, but I do it with matte medium, which is just a fancier version of Mod Podge. And I just affix it upside down, and then you have to like peel, not upside down, whatever, with the white part out, the back out. And then you just peel up the back, which is, yeah, like a super labor intensive and almost like punishing and grueling process, which I think to me is sort of my way of proving to myself that I deserve to show this image, or that I'm working to show this image, which is an image not of me. And in both of these cases, on the left and the right, it's an image of someone who lives in Punjab, where I was born but wasn't raised. And I don't even know if I have a right to take these images or show them. And I think this is my way of trying to understand or prove to myself that my intentions are good in a way that I don't really believe or am convinced by. And then this is what it looks like when it's kind of halfway through. And it really is a process that I think per panel, I probably scrubbed for maybe 20 hours. I had a really wonderful studio assistant for part of that, Michael Anderson, who's a student at SAIC. And then I make these frames also out of found wood, and my woodworking skills aren't so good, but they're getting better. And then I adhere the frames, and then I'm kind of left with, and I coat them, seal them. And then I'm kind of left with these images, which I think I could show by themselves. This is kind of what they look like. This was in the Jack Straw lobby before install. And I kind of just arranged them, right? So it's like a repeating image that I'm kind of repeating over and over. And then this is like a slightly different image. So creating like a parsed, fragmented, incomplete image that you can see, but you can't maybe fully access. And then this is when I arrange them kind of in the gallery before doing anything else. And I think this could be the show, but to me, it's, when I'm thinking about that flux space, that living space, it's really important to me that the work feel alive in that way and have that sort of movement, and to have that messy body part, the part that doesn't quite make sense or I can't really explain or talk about as well. And that's the back. So for this show, I kind of was doing this process of, it was really important to me to use, I used archival video and video that I've taken of Gidda, which is a Punjabi folk dance, which is really old. I think people have been doing it for a long time, for generations. And it's a really feminist and inclusionary space for women, a really celebratory space. And it's really inclusive of all women, including trans women, and kind of points to a time in Punjab before colonization and the value systems that we had that are kind of lost now. So what I do is I basically project into mirrors and then have the mirrors bounce back. So what you see here, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but there's thread here that I've stapled on the wall, and then there's an acrylic mirror hanging. And the projector is basically shooting into this mirror and several other ones, and then bouncing it in a fragmented way, that projection back onto the wall. So in the entire installation, there's 3 projectors and probably like 14 images on the wall. And most of those are just from the 2 projectors, which are reflecting, and then one is just pointed straight at the wall. And so this starts to move towards that sort of, this fragmented, messy space where the archival footage is combining with the footage that I've taken. And it kind of, I have one fan in the space that kind of moves some of that thread and kind of causes the projections to sway. And this is what it looks like lit. So this is like the front, like through the front. And then this is the back onto the wall. And you can see some of that thread system here. And then behind two of the sort of facade pieces in that framework, I have some cultural objects, or it's like for my personal lived culture, which is like, right, like I think there's a certain expectation of what I would show. And there are some really traditional Punjabi relics here, but there's also like, you know, mica that I got when I lived in North Carolina, which is like a really important part of my cultural history, my personal cultural history. And there's like beads that I got on clearance at Joanne Fabrics, you know, like all, it's like kind of mining and making sense of my own messy and unfixed cultural history. And so in thinking about this front and this back and this back, you know, I'm hoping that when the viewer comes into the space, they're moving between, their eyes are moving between all of those things at once. Because I'm trying to like have the work live in that space, and I'm also trying to live in that space career-wise, you know. I think there's something about, if I just took an image of these panels installed in a white box gallery, I think there's, I imagine I might more easily attain a certain level of like career status that I kind of want. But in like hiding the work in this way and complicating it with this back, I'm like checking that space, you know. I'm like kind of going between like trying to balance my ethics and my ego and this need for or desire for survival in the arts, and also my own ability to exploit these images and the people in these images, and the space between what I think, what is, you know, talked about a lot by Catherine McKittrick, who's a really amazing scholar about, she talks about Black fugitive geographies. And I think about that fugitivity of like what can live in that space when it's undefined. And then legibility, which is how we, right, get, ask for and receive what we need or want. I've really struggled with wanting to document this show because of these reasons. And I actually found that making short GIFs allowed, I think, goes back into that like, you know, unfixed space where the show can be experienced as moments, which I think is the part that I love about it most, is that there is this feeling of movement, of like small moments of like maybe breathing, and of like a sense that the show lives whether you see it or not. And so I really just enjoy these GIFs. And they're also like the way I've been just making, I had to make an account on giphy.com. And they export them like really low quality for some reason, which at first I was really frustrated by, but I'm also starting to enjoy that because it goes back and forth between that legibility. I think there's like, when I see it, when I see this GIF right now, I want it to be clear. And I think that yearning is important. So I'm thinking about this gap, right? The self you lay awake hoping you might become, and the self you encounter when you look in the mirror. And I think that gap will always exist. And like you could choose a side, right? Like you could either be stuck in just like hoping you were somebody else, or you could convince yourself you're never going to change and it's not worth trying. But there's like a third option. And I'm trying every day to choose that and to recognize that everything inside of me is everything I could ever want and need. And it exists in this expanse between what I have and what I desire, what I am and what I could be, and everything I know and I don't know. So I hope I captured some of that in the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Satpreet. That was really wonderful. I really appreciate your generosity and your honesty. And frankness. It's really a pleasure and a privilege to have you in the gallery and working with us. I echo the clap emojis. I had a question, and other people feel free to pop in the chat, or raise your hand. I guess that's a thing. Can you talk a little bit about the sound, because I think it's a really important element of the experience in the room, these layers of audio, and where they came from, and how it all relates. I'd love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, the sound. Yeah, I should have added a clip of the sound. It's to me, first of all, I want there to be a sense of like that you start to hear the exhibition and the work before you see it. So when you're outside of the gallery, you can hear it. That is really important, because to me, that idea of like, because it's like a very celebratory sound. It's like, I'll talk more about what the audio is, but for me, like this layering of people laughing or people singing, that is my essential experience in my childhood. It's like growing up in a really big family in a small house. It's like I'm kind of an introvert by nature, but so I became really accustomed to finding like a small place to hide and hearing this sound through a door or through a wall. And so that experience is really important to me. And then when you go in, there's this Punjabi word that I love, ronak, and there's no English equivalent, except that I always tell people that it's like that opening scene of Home Alone, when the camera's just like panning through the whole house and you're seeing like people fighting and people like, like whatever, laughing and all these things happening and like kids chasing each other. Like that feeling, especially around the holidays in the US, I feel like is really like what Ronak is. It's like this warmth, like warm chaos of people who know each other well in inhabiting a space together. And so that is really where the audio is really important to me in the work, because it creates that sort of layering, like the sense that there are several conversations happening in the space all together. And so the audio is the audio of the archival footage of the Gidda. So it's two trans women who are sort of chanting and singing together. And then there's some audio of like a wedding. And then there's the audio of a call to prayer, heard in rural Punjab, because out in Punjab, like there's a call to there. It's not like a Muslim call to prayer, because most of Punjabi people are Sikh, but there's like all the prayers will be kind of broadcasted hourly. So you hear that. And then the last piece of audio is of one of my really dear aunts reciting her favorite, or me trying to, most of the audio is actually me trying to convince her to recite her favorite boli, which is like the chant that you sing in Gidda. And she's like very shy about her voice. Her voice is very interesting. And she's very self-conscious about it, I guess, which I didn't know before this. And so most of the audio is just me trying to convince her. And then there's like 10 seconds of her actually singing. And then she starts laughing, which is her default mode. And she kind of laughs me off and she's like, okay, I'm done. Yeah, so all the audio works together in the space.
And so you left that in, the whole part of you convincing. I love that. Yeah, there is this, I think, is that the layer that's sort of over in the overhead speakers? Yeah, there's this sort of intimacy there that yeah, I mean, it's definitely something. Sure, it would have been great to hear it here, but I think it's hearing it in the space and as part of the overall work is key. So I do hope everybody can come see it in person and hear it in person. And it's connected with the work that's at BAM, right? And that's currently up as well.
Yeah. So that was sort of my first exploration into the projection. I've been doing the multiple video channels with multiple audio channels for a while, but it was the first time I kind of was thinking about projection and the sort of image, and really like doing this like facade, this like seductive, what I think of as like the seductive facade, and then this back end. Yeah. And so this is just building on that. And that space is so light that you can't really get away with doing a lot with the projection. It's really hard to see it, but obviously the Jack Straw space is like, so it can be so controlled. So it's like this dark, intimate space, and there's like all this projection, which I really love.
Yeah, that's definitely one of our I mean, I wasn't there when they started the gallery, but you know, I think one of the key things is having it be whatever the artist wants it to be. So I'm glad that that worked for you. Do we have any questions from the folks here in Zoom? Or if you want to just turn your camera on and wave, that's always nice too. I don't see any over on Facebook. Well, all right. Well, thank you again for being here. Thank you, Satpreet. And again, everybody, please do make an appointment if you haven't come to visit the gallery already. It's possible to stop by, but you know, we don't encourage that because somebody might not be there or the gallery might not be on. So it's best if you can call or email. Yeah, thank you for spending some of your Friday evening with us. And yeah, the show closes April 8th. And our next exhibit opens April 22nd. We'll have an actual opening reception at the gallery again with Chani Choi's new work. So should be a busy and wonderful spring. And yeah, thank you, Satpreet, and thank you, everybody. Have a great night.
Thank you everyone for coming.